Accuses America of lies after the collapse of the latest ceasefire. Last night, rebel-held areas of Aleppo suffered their heaviest night of airstrikes in months.
Also tonight, rationing of IVF treatment in parts of England because of the NHS cash crisis.
The British troops facing investigation over alleged abuses in Afghanistan. And
No comment, I'm so sorry, but no comment, but thank you.
Bye-bye Bake-Off, Mary bids farewell to soggy bottoms.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale and James Mates.
good evening. A defiant President Assad today accused the United States of deliberately killing Syrian soldiers and warned that the bitter civil war would drag on. Assad spoke after Syrian and Russian warplanes unleashed the heaviest bombardment in months onto the besieged city of Aleppo.
Reports say 45 people were killed in a series of attacks, and some of the shells and bombs contained phosphorus. As our international affairs editor Raghi Omar reports, it's further dashed what little hope remained of another ceasefire.
Allahu Akbar.
Bombed with chlorine 2 weeks ago. Last night, the sky rained what eyewitnesses said was burning phosphorus down on the people of eastern Aleppo. In the streets outside, what seemed like the unmistakable telltale signs of the bright white burning pools of phosphorus. Mohammed and his wife of 2 years, who is pregnant, were caught in the midst of it.
We were about to die. You can imagine when you see your wife, who is pregnant, is about to die. Imagine the panic on her face. Imagine the panic and the fear on the people who are getting out of their buildings, getting out of their homes, fleeing away to, I don't know where, to somewhere which is safer.
As rescuers were pulling survivors from the rubble today, President Assad gave an interview. He refused to accept that people like Mohammed, who remained in the rebel-held parts of Aleppo, were really under any kind of siege.
They've been shelling the neighboring areas and the position of the Syrian army for years, non-stop. How could they be starving while at the same time they can have armaments? How can we prevent the foods and the medical aid from reaching that area and we cannot stop the armament from reaching that area, which is not logical.
He also adamantly refused to accept that either Russian or Syrian warplanes were responsible for the bombing of a UN aid convoy meant for Aleppo on Monday.
Regarding the claim of the White House yesterday, accusing either the Syrian or the Russian, in that regard, I would say whatever the American officials said about the conflicts in Syria in general has no credibility. Whatever they say, it just lies.
Little wonder President Assad is so self-confident. Today, civilians were evacuated from the second city, Homs. His forces took the last rebel-held district, bringing the whole city under his control. They join the millions of others exiled by this vicious war.
So, Raghi, are we now effectively back to square one with little or no hope of another ceasefire?
I think pretty much, yes. And I suspect that that's exactly the way President Assad prefers it for several reasons. He is slowly encroaching on rebel-held areas. We saw there the city of Homs, which is now entirely in his control. Aleppo is besieged. He's besieging other rebel-held areas of Douma. And it undermines the credibility of the UN plan, which is for a transition away from Assad. And he'll say, well, the war's going on, I've got all the cards, I've got Russian support, I'm getting rid of the terrorists as he describes it, and it ridicules the idea that somehow there's going to be a peace plan that sees him going away. So he is right in a lot of ways in saying that this war will go on for many, many years because there's no other credible alternative, let alone a ceasefire.
Raghi Omar, thank you.
Here, there is growing evidence that IVF treatment is the latest NHS service being rationed in England. As ITV News reported last week, many GPs are reducing access to care because of a cash crisis. A campaign group says fertility treatment is at a 12-year low in England. And today, one NHS commissioning body discussed cutting the number of cycles it offers couples. Nazanin Moshiri has more.
Hannah Wynne has been trying to get pregnant for 3 years. She moved to Ipswich after her previous health authority in North Essex cut all of its IVF services. She says the system is stacked up against her.
I thought that there would be a national policy for IVF, that if you were eligible, you'd get it. I had no idea that it would involve all the different rules and regulations being set by all the different areas, you know, down to quite small areas, the CCGs, so you can move 5 miles up the road and it's completely different.
The provision of IVF across the UK has never been so varied. Women in Scotland will soon get 3 cycles. In Wales, they're entitled to 2. And in England, the guidance is 3, but that's not guaranteed. More than 80% of local health providers offer fewer cycles. One area in Somerset only offers 1 cycle, and in East Anglia, 3 health authorities have scrapped IVF altogether.
Let's face it, it's not right that a woman in Liverpool is more deserving of fertility treatment than one woman in Bedford or in Essex.
But clinical commissioning groups say they don't have unlimited resources for IVF. They want to give patients what they need, but are facing some tough choices.
A right to being a parent, you know, that should be everybody's right. And that's why it's so unfair. That's what makes us feel angry and also isolated. It's already an isolating thing. You know, all around you, all of your friends are having families and you feel, you know, that you're missing out on so much.
Starting a family is difficult enough, but the inequality of access to IVF has never been greater. Nazanin Mashiri, ITV News.
And to share your experiences of the NHS, please go to our website, itv.com/news.
Now, there are fresh concerns tonight over whether an investigation into alleged abuses committed by British troops in Afghanistan is justified. Hundreds of cases are being investigated by Royal Military Police under Operation Northmoor. But there are fears the scope is too wide and some veterans are being hounded, as our political correspondent Libby Vina reports.
Goodbye from Bastion, safe flight.
2 years since the last British troops left Afghanistan, and the controversy over their legacy goes on. Today there were fresh questions as to whether an investigation into allegations of abuse is really justified. One former soldier, now an MP, says not.
We need to close that gap between what we say we are doing and what we are actually doing to look after those going through these investigations. There's absolutely no doubt that investigations backed up by credible evidence must be investigated. But we stand by our soldiers, we do not hang them out to dry.
551 allegations of abuse by soldiers serving in Afghanistan are now being investigated. They relate to complaints by 157 Afghan individuals. Costs have increased by £7.5 million this year, and 124 military police are working on the investigation, double the original number. Back in 2013, Sergeant Alexander Blackman was convicted of murder after he killed a wounded Afghan fighter. This footage crucial evidence.
Yeah, shut off, it's mortal call you. Nothing you would do to us.
I know.
Exactly. All right. Obviously this doesn't go anywhere, fellas.
Yeah, roger, mate.
I've just broken Geneva Convention.
Yeah, roger.
But the Prime Minister, who met the Chief of the Defence Staff today, is known to be concerned about what she's called an industry of vexatious allegations. Colonel Tim Collins, who served in Iraq, wants the whole process scrapped.
The British Army has basically told Iraq and Afghanistan to go and do stuff and then figure out what that stuff was. Well, you can't now blame the soldiers because they had no idea what they were trying to achieve.
The reason that we are now 10 years later having so many investigations has to be in large part because of failures at the time to not make sure that allegations that were coming out from Afghanistan, that were coming out from Iraq, were not quickly, independently and effectively investigated.
It seems, despite the controversy, this investigation won't be wound up anytime soon. Libby Vina, ITV News.
Police in the American city of Charlotte are preparing for a possible third night of violence after a black man was shot by an officer.
A state of emergency has been declared following 2 nights of clashes between police and protesters after Keith Lamont Scott died on Tuesday. From the United States, our correspondent Robert Moore has the latest.
For the second consecutive night, one of America's most diverse cities descended into chaos. protesters and police repeatedly clashing. The governor of North Carolina declared a state of emergency, allowing the city of Charlotte to receive extra police resources to bring the situation under control. But in the rioting, another African American was shot, although the circumstances remain unclear.
I stood right next to that man when he got shot in the head over there. I was wiping off his blood. You see my hands? I was wiping off his blood. I was sitting right next to him.
They put out a pepper spray. People are running from it. Jerry, get out of there! Jerry, get out of there!
Much of this was being broadcast live on TV networks across America, adding to the sense of a country struggling to overcome deep political and racial divisions, with reporters at times caught up in the fighting.
Try to grab those people.
The disturbances were triggered by the shooting of Keith Scott. Police say he was carrying a gun, and this image may support them. But Scott's family say any weapon at the scene was planted. With the National Guard arriving in the city, America's Attorney General called for calm.
I urge those responsible for bringing violence to these demonstrations to stop, because you're drowning out the voices of commitment and change, and you're ushering in more tragedy and grief in our communities.
But some activists are saying only economic pressure will work to ensure justice.
And what we're calling for is an economic boycott of the whole city of Charlotte. Since black lives do not matter for this city, then our black dollar shouldn't matter.
Police are refusing to release the video of the original shooting, and that could stoke further unrest amid accusations of a cover-up. Robert Moore, ITV News, Washington.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News.
No soggy bottom. Let's have a look.
No soggy bottom there, Mary.
Paul Hollywood opts to save his own bake-off, but Mary Berry will not be joining him at Channel 4.
And Liverpool honours the Hillsborough campaigners and their 27-year battle for the truth. Those stories and more after this break. Welcome back. The mother of a British teenager murdered in India has told ITV News she hopes she'll finally have justice for her daughter. 15-year-old Scarlett Keeling was found dead 8 years ago after a beach party in Goa. An Indian court will decide tomorrow whether two men accused of killing her are responsible. Scarlett's mother, Fiona, says the wait has been harrowing, as Dan Rivers reports.
Hers was a life ended just as it should have been beginning. Scarlett Keeling was only 15 when she was drugged, raped and murdered on a beach in India. 8 years on, her mother is about to find out if justice will be done for a daughter whose death the Indian authorities initially dismissed as an accident. Fiona McEwen spoke to ITV News before she travelled to India for tomorrow's verdict.
It's an exhausting and harrowing experience, having to just keep checking, because there's nobody contacted me to let me know anything. No information's come to me from the Indian authorities whatsoever.
The two accused men, Placido Carvalho and Samson de Souza, here on the right, remain on bail, charged not with murder but with the lesser crime of homicide. Tomorrow, Scarlett's mother will know if they have been found guilty.
I wanted the charges to be much harsher, but I understand now why the CBI could only give the lesser charges, and because they would never have made the murder charges stick.
Scarlett had been staying with a local family at a beach resort while her own family had gone travelling in India. Her mother claims the Indian police botched the initial investigation, losing vital evidence of the attack at a beach party. It was only when Fiona insisted on a second post-mortem that it was revealed Scarlett had been drugged and raped.
A bit nervous because I want to put it away, I want to let it go. I don't want to have to keep fighting for what should be given anyway.
Tomorrow, the family will find out if finally they have achieved justice for Scarlett so long after she was taken from them. Dan Rivers, ITV News.
Southern Rail passengers face yet more disruption after union leaders announced 14 days of strike action beginning next month. The RMT union has called the strikes in a long-running dispute over driver-only operated trains. Southern Rail and the government said the action is unnecessary.
16 people have been detained after police stopped a lorry on the M1 in Bedfordshire. Some of the migrants were taken to hospital as a precaution.
And a former star of the TV quiz show Eggheads has appeared in court after he was arrested on suspicion of murder. CJ DeMoy was arrested at Heathrow Airport yesterday over allegations he killed a drug addict in Amsterdam in 1988.
Now, Mary Berry today became the third key ingredient to leave the Great British Bake Off. The presenter joined colleagues Mel and Sue in deciding to stick with the BBC rather than make the move with the programme to Channel 4. Fellow judge, however, Paul Hollywood is going, saying he couldn't turn his back on the show. Nina and Anna now on the Great Bake Off breakup.
Her dog seemed somewhat bemused by all the attention, but Mary Berry, back home tonight, simply smiled for our cameras but would not be drawn on signing off from Bake Off.
With great sadness, the person leaving us this week is...
Normally, one contestant leaves a week, but in the past 7 days of Bake Off twists and turns, it's the presenters who've been departing.
Could you explain to me why you have a pile of 6?
Today, Mary Berry, undoubtedly one of the show's main ingredients, has announced that she's leaving the famous tent.
Just 30 minutes left
when the show moves to its new home on Channel 4. In a statement, she says, "My decision to stay with the BBC is out of loyalty to them, as they have nurtured me and the show that was a unique and brilliant format from day one. I'm just sad for the audience who may not be ready for change. Farewell to soggy bottoms." She is, says one Bake Off finalist, a serious loss.
Mary's just this little island of just positivity. You know, when she comes in, even if you've basically destroyed your cake, she'll compliment your shirt. You know, she's got that lovely calming effect in the show.
Last week, the BBC announced it had lost the show to Channel 4, who paid £75 million to seal the deal. Shortly after, presenters Mel Gedroych and Sue Perkins said they were not going with the dough to the new show. And today Mary Berry confirmed she too wouldn't be moving channels. That leaves just Paul Hollywood. Today he said he's delighted to be staying with Bake Off and has signed a 3-year deal.
Wheat biscuits.
I'll miss Mary, he added on Twitter, but that she's made the right decision for her.
Sad that it all falls apart.
The presenters and judges have won huge praise for their on-screen rapport. The question is, can anyone else rise to that challenge?
Can you have new chemistry? Yes, you can. And everyone knows it when they see it, but I'll tell you from a TV professional's point of view, creating it is devilishly difficult.
On your marks and get set, bake.
The new show's format will be the same, says the programme makers. Same recipe then, but definitely new ingredients. Nina Nanar, ITV News.
And finally, families of the 96 victims of the Hillsborough disaster are tonight receiving a very special honour on their loved ones' behalf. They're being presented with a posthumous award of the Freedom of the City of Liverpool.
Yes, a civic honour is also being given to some of those who helped the families to get to the truth, including Professor Phil Scraton. From Liverpool, Damon Green reports.
In the heart of Liverpool, a celebration, a commemoration. 100 names, 100 medals, 100 people awarded the freedom of the city that took them to its heart, though most could not be here. Their families struggled for 27 years for the justice that was denied them. It was only earlier this year that a jury returned the verdict of unlawful killing they'd always fought for. Not just the families, others too, like football legend Kenny Dalglish, who comforted the bereaved, and Phil Scraton, the college professor who assembled the thousands of documents that helped bring the truth to light. Today they too received the freedom of the city they love.
For us to be included in the same roll call is a tremendous honour. It's an honour that I can hardly describe in one sense. It's one that I never sought, it's one that I never expected. It's one that I receive with humility, but also with an immense feeling of pride in my own city.
The families will never be forgotten, and it's a shame that they had to go through this to get the recognition. But the football club always said that it wasn't about any individual or any portion of football, it was everybody as a football club.
The families of the 96 who campaigned so long, at times it seemed against all the odds, have already received the freedom of Liverpool. Today they were invited to accept the honour on behalf of loved ones they lost.
For my daughters to be honoured by a city
that we all loved is so special. It's a special honour from a special city for some very special people today.
This is more than a formal honour that this city has bestowed, more than a recognition of sacrifice and years of tireless work. Everyone who's received the freedom of the city of Liverpool today is really, truly family. Damon Green, ITV News, on Merseyside.
That is all for now. Tom Bradby will be here with news at 10.
From all the evening news team, have a very good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.